Good afternoon. My name is Elise Herzig, and I have the honor of being the Executive Director of JIAS Toronto, a settlement agency that has been helping newcomers, immigrants, and refugees settle to life in Canada. Today we have the honor of having Immigration Judge Albert Wong joining us as a keynote speaker, or actually the person I'm going to be sharing a conversation with. Albert Wong has served as a citizenship judge in the GTA since 2014 and has more than 39 years of service in the Canadian Armed Forces. I can go on and on about the resume of Judge Wong, but really he's a remarkable person, fascinating to talk to, and I'd like to share with you this afternoon some bits of the conversations we started to have yesterday. So some people celebrate Canada Day with hamburgers, barbecues, picnics, or fireworks. At JIAS Toronto, we thought the best way to celebrate Canada Day is to speak to somebody who has welcomed and made over 100,000 citizens of Canada. So welcome, Albert Wong. It's a delight to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me. What an honor it is for me to be here to join you in this. What a great way to celebrate Canada Day.
So we had a wonderful discussion yesterday about the work you do, and perhaps you can share with people, before we get into your story of being a citizenship judge, your family's journey to Canada.
Sure. We came to Canada in 1971. My father came earlier, a year earlier in 1970, and we came from Malaysia, a family of mother, father, and 4 children. I was the oldest at 13, and my parents had a lovely lifestyle back in Malaysia. They were both professionals. They were well off. They had a large extended family, a huge network of friends, and they cashed it all in and decided to come to Canada for opportunity, mainly for the children. And you have to appreciate in 1970, 71, not many people from Malaysia knew what Canada was all about. It was this far, strange land, way across the ocean, very cold, very big, but that's about all you knew. And so we really set off on an adventure.
I loved when you shared your story with me yesterday. You talked to me about the idea that when your parents came here, they went from being professionals and they had this trust in the dream of being a new immigrant, coming to Canada and really providing better opportunities for you and your siblings. Yeah. And we'll get into more detail with that later, but I would love if you can share with the group. I mean, your father was a successful professional. They had a wonderful life. He comes to Toronto in search of a job, and he was having a really hard time finding one. And can you share with the group today that's listening what happened and how he landed up in Sudbury?
Well, he was a principal. He had his, and you have to appreciate, my father went through the Second World War, and as a young boy, and was in occupied Malaya with the Japanese forces, and survived that, but had not had much formal education at that point, but managed to pick himself up and got a scholarship for higher education in England, and got his teacher's degree there. He was a vice principal of a school in Malaysia. It was a very high level position. And he came across and really had no other leads except that he was here on his own 2 feet, stayed in a rooming house in Chinatown, Toronto's Chinatown, started to look for jobs. Unfortunately, he couldn't find a teaching job anywhere in the GTA, and heard from one of the men who was in the rooming house said that Inco in Sudbury was hiring laborers. He was 41 years old, and he went up to the recruiting office, and they thought he was too old, and he convinced them to give him a try. I think that's the ultimate, that's the typical immigrant story, that you will come and you would do anything you can using your resources, your wit, your knowledge, your experience, but more importantly, your passion and desire. And you would take on anything you can to get a foothold, to get a toe into the door and start again. And that's what my father did. And his first job was a laborer at a nickel mine in Sudbury.
And he ended up retiring as?
Oh, sorry, and he retired eventually when after 20-some years with the company, he retired as a first-class stationary engineer. He was the engineer in charge of all the heating and the cooling of the entire plant in Sudbury. And he worked his way up in that, getting his tickets.
And I think your probably story resonates with a lot of our listeners. People leave behind their economic networks, their social networks, their lifestyles, and they come to Canada with the hope of a better future. And we talked about it yesterday. If you're single, it's one thing and you're young, but if you're a family person and you're bringing over your spouse and children, you're really doing it to try and provide a better future for your family. And we'll talk a little later, but more go back to your family story, because I just found it so relevant, and I found it a story that I think really would resonate with our listeners today. But you've been doing for the last 6 years, you've been a citizenship judge. Tell me what it feels like.
It's probably, I will share a story with you. I was at a ceremony with, and Mr. Kirsty Duncan was with me, and it was at the Ontario Science Centre. And the Right Honourable Paul Martin was there, former Prime Minister. And unbeknownst to me, he had not been to a ceremony before, according to him. And halfway through the ceremony, I threw to him because he was the keynote speaker. And he started to speak, and suddenly paused, and he looked at me and he said, "Judge Wong, I think you have the best job in Canada." And I said, "You're right, Mr. Prime Minister. I do have the best job in Canada." You know why? It's such a, because I'm seeing people achieving their dream. I'm seeing hundreds, thousands of people at a time achieving their dream. And everybody has a different story. Everybody comes to the ceremony with different ambitions and aspirations. They have the children to think of. They have elderly parents to think of. But in that one moment, a country, Canada, has said, "You're home. Welcome home." And what a great feeling that would be to allow people to experience that. And so I think I do have the best best job in the country. Selfishly, I would say.
I think I'm tied. I get to see the people working on their dreams. I think being executive director of JIAS is pretty close, not quite the same, but we get to help people make their dreams come true. And it's an honor to lead my team doing that on a daily basis. And we did get to talk about that yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I loved what we talked about in our conversation yesterday was the notion of trust. Mm-hmm. What does trust look like from Canada's point of view, and what does trust look like from the new Canadians' point of view?
If I can touch back to what you just said about the work that JIAS does and why I'm so happy, and I find it's an honor to be here this afternoon with all of you and with your colleagues. It's a part of that trust. When you come, you're leaving a life behind. You know, it doesn't matter how sophisticated you are or how well connected you are. It is a new chapter in one's life, in one's family's trajectory. Your trajectory has changed. And when you land here, you have to trust on a few things. One, of course, you're confident because you made the choice to move, you know, and you have made a big decision. But you also trust that you will succeed on your own. That you know, inherently, all of us, I think, all immigrants say, "I can do it by myself. Thank you very much." But what is different is that when you come to a place like Canada, we have groups that will say, "We know you can do it by yourself, but let us help you as well. Let's help you get familiar and bring in so that we can enhance your talent." And the example I would use is this. When someone comes here and they say, "I found a job. I'm going to be working in a mine, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week." My question, the first time I would have, for my first day before the day before my first day of work would be, what should I bring for lunch? Should I emulate the other Canadians and try and sneak a look and see, what do they bring? Is it a sandwich? And what if the food I eat is having garlic? Should I stop eating garlic so I can fit in? And so having JIAS and settlement agencies like JIAS to say, "Listen, here's how you get to work. Here's how you fit. Here's what happens at work," helps. Same thing with school. I remember my first day at school. before I went, my first day at school was in grade 9. And I was terrified as to how to behave. How would I do it? And oh my God, Mom, you cannot pack that for me. I can't bring this to school and eat that in front of the other people. So helping, and that's why I think one of the important things that in our immigration stories that we have in Canada is the settlement agencies, and the settlement agencies for landed immigrants, permanent residents, and refugees, to help them to break into the community. Now, I say this with a certain degree of caution. I don't think we want everyone to act the same way. I think one of the gems of our immigration story is that everyone comes in and brings a part of them to this country and makes it work for the better. We do not need people to become Canadianized and fit a certain mode of how they should look and how they should act and how they should talk. And so the beauty of our settlement agencies is because you bring everyone together, you help them by giving them some understanding of the country, but you also encourage them to come up to the fore.
We had a talk yesterday about this specific topic for those of you all listening in. And one of the things that we discussed was the idea that every immigrant that I have met, including my father and my mother, they all recall the story of the first person that helped them. Whether it was somebody helping them saying, this is where you go buy your groceries, or if you're going to have to take a driver's class, this is where you go.
Yes.
Or don't send your kids to school with the following. And at JIAS, one of the wonderful programs we've offered for years is a Ready to School program that I shared with Albert yesterday. So kids get to go in a Canadian classroom and they learn to speak Canada. And so
in August.
In August, they go in advance, so they learn how to sing "O Canada," so they fit in. And yesterday, one of the stories that Albert shared with me is what it was like to be the only Malaysian Chinese student in his high school. And I think that lens that you bring to that understanding is one that you bring to the citizens. And can you perhaps share what that was like in 1971 for you?
Yes. Well, I always say Canada, to me, this is an indication of how beautiful Canada is and will also continue to be. In 1971, when we first came and we settled in Sudbury, it was quite remote. I was the only Chinese student. Chinese, I wasn't Canadian then, but Chinese student in high school. Not many people can say that these days. And the closest place that you had to go to buy soy sauce in Sudbury in 1971 was Toronto, Chinatown. And I've met families from, through citizenship, my work with citizenship, I've met families from Ottawa, they're South Asians, and the only place they could buy rice in the early 70s from Ottawa was to come down to Gerrard Street and buy it at some of the Indian grocery stores on Gerrard Street. Unless you wanted minute rice. And so that's the difference. And that's how we have grown as a country. The fact that we allow people to bring themselves to this country and show us the beauty of themselves in this country has then made us all beautiful. I'll give you another example. It was around 1973, 74. And we were grocery shopping, and it was a major grocery store in Sudbury. And we saw a mango. And we went, oh my God, mango, wow. And we put it in our basket. And it was at a moment when, you know how the entire store stops and stares at you? That was that moment. So we go to the checkout counter, and a woman stopped us. And she said, excuse me, we're all wondering, how do you eat this? And I think the fact that we now look at us, and I'll guarantee you in every mall, in every shopping center, you will see mango and all sorts of exotic fruits. We bring that that's what our immigration story has brought us to. I would share something else, Elise, that I was just reflecting as I was preparing for this discussion today. The German National Television Network decided to come and film one of our ceremonies because they were quite intrigued. And it was a W5 style article, and they were wanting to see how we how people became Canadians in Canada. And his question to me at the end of the ceremony is, why do you do that? Why do you have citizenship ceremonies? It's so expensive. It's so much work. And I said, I agree. It is a lot of work. But you see, and it was a ceremony of 100 people in that one room. And I said, you notice that we did not segregate by gender, or by race, or by economic status. You could literally have a billionaire sitting beside someone who is on welfare. But the beauty is they're all standing up together and they're saying the oath together. And it's that integrative effect. And I think the more, and I say this and I hasten to say this, we're not perfect as a society. Canada's not perfect. I'm very proud to be a Canadian, but I'll also tell you I'm not a perfect Canadian. And having that integrating effect and having an ability for our immigrants to come forward, or people in Canada to come forward and share with them, with everyone else, what they have and their strengths, and expose their weaknesses as well, so that their blind spots, so that they can improve on it. That's what I think is going to be the future of Canada.
And I loved how we talked about that yesterday. And in particular, first of all, thank you for sharing the story about the mango and what it was like to go to school. I don't think it matters whether you come from Latvia or you come from Brazil or you come from Malaysia. I think that every newcomer wants to belong, and they want to fit in but still maintain parts of their identity. And whether it's the food culture or even the accent, in our conversation yesterday, we had this whole discussion about, is it correct to pronounce something the right way? And what is the right way? If you want to have people still maintain their identity, and maybe you can share your thoughts on that, because you experienced that.
I went through that when I joined the military. I felt that I had to act and behave in a certain way and speak in a certain way to fit into the military. But more and more I realized, and as more and more, as the military diversifies in its recruiting, I'm seeing the beauty of having to say, there are different ways, there are different sounds, there are different accents, that it's like art. If one was to only appreciate art in only one way and force everyone to do the same thing and be appreciative of art in one way, we have a very boring community and society. The beauty of the society is that we have different voices, different sounds, different smells, different music. And I think when we accept that and say, maybe I need to pay attention and maybe she has an idea that I should be listening to, we become stronger. I'll say this, I think our business community is coming along really well. And you see corporations are actually getting quite strong and trying to expand the diversity. We need to get beyond the, if I could just jump in, a bridge over, Elise, if you don't mind. I think from the business world, we need to go beyond what I call the bumper slogan, bumper sticker slogans. We believe in diversity, with, and I have the one woman in my board, I have the one Black person in my board. I am seeing some strength here, and I will shout out, and I want to throw out a shout out because I've been working with them, RBC, one of the biggest banks in Canada, and they have a welcome center in Brampton. They basically took some space. It's not a bank, it's not a branch, it's a way for RBC to pay back and say, if you are a newcomer to Canada and you have questions, we will help you with those questions. And the people working in the Welcome Center are RBC employees. And I think that goes way beyond the slogans and the statements and the CEO tweets. It goes into commitment to say, you belong, we belong, we'll work together. And I just want to throw out that one as well.
You're the most authentic person to say this, because you were Diversity Person of the Year from the magazine in 2016. And so if anybody can speak to this, I know it's you. And we talked a lot yesterday about the fact of moving forward. I shared with you the story that before I worked with the Indigenous communities, and it was a privilege for me, but I realized that I was really ignorant before I spent time with those communities. And I had always gone to the airport and gave my passport and said, I'm a proud Canadian when I, enter the border. And after working with the Indigenous communities, I felt a little awkward saying that. And you gave me such a beautiful phrase yesterday. You said, we're proud and not and imperfect. You said that there's so much room for us as a country. And watching what is happening in the world around us, the chaos that's happening, the issues of systemic racism, and we see it all over.
Mm-hmm.
Can you perhaps share your thoughts as a citizenship judge, somebody
Mm-hmm.
representing our country, your thoughts on, as a nation, what do we have to do, and the lessons we should be sharing with newcomers?
I think it's at the very heart of what we mean by citizenship. I think when we become a citizen, when we come to a ceremony, we raise our right hand and we swear an oath of citizenship. There's a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions and some tears, but we really need to start to think about what is it that holds our society together as a society. And to me, that's the essence of citizenship. Some of us would come to Canada and think that I've come to a land that's going to make me rich. I have access, I have opportunity, and I'm going to work very hard, and I will retire very comfortably with my pension. I've made it. But over time, as you start to interact with this society, there's actually a question to say, what is it that we hold true, precious, important? And that's the glue. And I think it would come down to the sharing. I find it intriguing wherever I go into settlement agencies or speak at settlement agencies or speak to different groups. One of the first things that people want to do, they want to share their food with me. And you had the same experience with the Yazidis. Here's a group that had gone through a terrible, terrible, unimaginable assault, abuse. And yet, when they finally came to Canada and you are helping them, JIAS is helping them, one of the first things they want to do is cook a meal for you.
Definitely.
And that's the integrating part. That's that glue that holds us together. So from a citizenship point of view, we have to, and that's why I say we're proud to be Canadian, but we have to recognize that Canada is not perfect. And our job is to continue to improve on that. One of the things that we have to do is really look and be aware of and speak to the biases and the prejudice that's baked into our society. It's inevitable. It is there, whether it's because of gender, whether it's orientation, or race, or skin color, and I would highlight for you our Indigenous plight, the plight of our Indigenous population. We have to address that. And if we truly want to be an ally, if we truly want to have strong citizenship, we don't have to fight the fight for them, but we sure have to support them. We surely have to make sure the space is there for them to speak out. And we must also lend our voice when we see injustice and inequality. And to me, that's that citizenship we speak about.
And I love the fact that at your citizenship ceremonies, you speak about reconciliation, that you use those opportunities not just to have a group come together side by side where everybody is equal and to take an oath, but you also use it as an opportunity to educate about important issues that as Canadians they need to know about. So one of the things I'm the most proud about at JIAS is that we really spend a lot of time making sure that new Canadians have that opportunity, immigrants and newcomers from whatever country, to learn about other cultures,
Yes.
about how we celebrate and are open to those different types of approaches and thinking, and that's what makes our country so rich. Mm-hmm. We talked yesterday, and I do want to go back to that food issue. When I was interviewed for the job at JIAS, one of the questions I asked my panel, and I shared this with you yesterday, was I asked the board members, how would they measure success at the end of my first year? And one board member said she wanted our clients to be in a position, not that they were just eking by and making it in Canada, but they actually were able to host people for meals, that they were able to share of their bounty. And I love that you raised that in the conversation with the group today, because it's only when you sit at somebody's table and they get to be the giver and you get to be the recipient of their generosity that people really feel that they belong. You know, that you make it an equal, I guess you equalize the relationship, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love the fact that you shared that.
And it's a good measure. I agree with you, Elise. It's a good measure of success because you see, when we first came, again, part of our background, my mother had to learn how to cook. We had always had servants, we had always had cooks, full-time nannies and live-in nannies. And so I remember we invited our neighbor, because when we arrived in Sudbury, my father didn't have a car. So our neighbors came to pick us up at the train station. And so we wanted to repay in kind, and we invited them for dinner. I didn't know there was a difference between a salt and a pepper shaker. Who knew the S and the P meant something? And so I put the salt in the pepper shaker, and and it was humorous. It was funny, and we laughed about it. But that's that when you start to eat, when you share bread, and you start to laugh together, I think that's the citizenship that we want.
So one of the questions that's come to me is about how challenging citizenship test be. What are your thoughts about that?
How challenging can a citizenship test be? I think it's a tough test. You have to prepare for it, and for some, and I'm always conscious and very conscious of the people who one might not have formal education, and so a test would be intimidating, and people who might not have English or French as their first language. Again, that's intimidating. But it is doable, and we will allow you a way to do the test so that it fits your personality. So, for example, you'll be asked to come to write a test, and you're asked to prepare, and you're given a book, and you study in the classes. And JIAS, I know that's that as well. They train. Should a person not pass twice, you get two chances to write the test, and it's a multiple choice questions, and you have to, the pass mark is 15 out of 20. You will then be asked to come in, and now the test will be administered orally. And if language is a problem, we'll allow you to have a translator to answer, so that you understand the question. Of course, you have to say the answer in English, but or French. But the thing is, we will try our best to help you to pass. And I think it's not to be seen as a barrier to citizenship as much as to see that you are ready for citizenship. You know what you get, that you understand what you're getting into, and you understand the country that you're joining now. There's a lovely phrase that came out of the federal court in reviewing one of the citizenship applications, one of the appeals of a decision from a citizenship judge. And the federal court judge, Muldoon is his name, who said, the whole purpose of the citizenship application process is to show that you have thrown your lot in life with this society, that you're rubbing shoulders and elbows, and you are into, So I just love that phrase, you've thrown your lot in life with this society. And that's what the test does, is to say, you understand what you're doing, you understand where you're coming to, and this is a way for you to at least show that you had at least understood a bit about Canada to become a Canadian citizen. I would also tell you this though, Elise, I would bet you that if we administered the citizenship test to a group of naturally born Canadians, I think they would fail.
I think you're right. I think that many Canadians, take it for granted, and they don't have to study for the test, so they don't learn necessarily those things. But I know for myself as a first-generation Canadian, I shared with you yesterday how I was at Queen's Park making a presentation to a standing committee, and before I went and presented on behalf of the energy sector, I took my cell phone, called my dad, and I said, thank you for choosing Canada, because there were other countries that were available at the time for him to go to. And cannot imagine a better country
Yeah.
to live in, especially today.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about how Canada really is a beacon for the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I could just touch back on something very quickly, and sorry, Elise, I forgot about the test. The people who have to take a test are those from the age of 18 to 55. So if you're over the age of 55, you don't actually have to take the test. So we do have a lot of safety valves and off-ramps to accommodate quite a large net of people. Will we catch everyone? No, but at least we do try.
And I love the fact that you shared with me in terms of, in our conversations about this, how Canada does all best efforts to help newcomers succeed in this process. As an agency, most of our funding is from the federal government. And they fund us to be able to help newcomers do settlement plans. They fund us to provide English as second language. They fund us to help build community connections. They fund us to help make sure that families, especially vulnerable ones, get the support that they need. And it is such an honor to live and to live in this country, but to work in an organization that gets to partner with the federal government with the goal of helping people get elevated. And I often say that that's our job at JIAS, is to elevate people along their settlement journey. We're not there to write their test. We're not there to find their job, but we're there to really make the referrals and help them succeed with the tools and the insights that they need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also add another group, if I could, Elise. There's also another group of people out there in Canada that are quite remarkable. These are your private sponsors of refugees. These are your local communities, your family organizations, families who come together and decide to sponsor refugee, church groups, religious groups. And you saw that in spades with the Vietnamese boat people when we brought them in. It really was an eye-opener for the rest of the world. It was forward-thinking, it was bold, it was dynamic. And I think it set the stamp for us for when we took in the Syrian refugees the way we did. And when you look at the results of what happens, the ones who come through the private sponsorship actually have a much higher integrative rate and are able to get the footing quite fast because of that. And so there's a large group, and they are your neighbors. They are people that you would meet at your Starbucks coffee shop and probably don't even know that, but they are the ones who truly, to me, these are the heroes. These are the Canadians.
100%. And when I think about the JIAS family, we have our staff and we have this army of volunteers. And we could not do our work without them. In April, I ran a webinar also on a similar topic about how refugees are coping with COVID. And our team really, while the government did a great job trying to provide insights and information, it wasn't printed in all languages, in English, all those announcements, and it was our volunteers that really made sure that our clients understood and were informed, and our staff. But we had one of our privately sponsored refugee groups on the panel, and they were incredible. So they were doing driveway visits with the families. They were bringing the children books and toys and puzzles. They were talking to the parent how they're coping with kids. It doesn't matter whether they were 6 months, 20 years in Canada. Every parent was having challenges with teaching the children and doing the school. But our volunteers are instrumental in what we did. And when we started 98 years ago, we were started by volunteers. It was volunteers that wanted to help newcomers that were fleeing, being persecuted in Europe, Jewish newcomers in the country. And since then, we help every newcomer coming to the country. Left on our interview, and one of the things that I'm seeing come up, it's been remarked how you make that citizenship ceremony magical? I know my staff, members of my staff got to see you in January when you performed citizenship. So what they loved was the spirit that you brought to that. Now, that's not an easy thing to just happen. How did you get into your groove? Like, how did it just take place for you?
I just enjoy it. I just have so much fun. You know, I really, truly enjoy, and I'm just thrilled that your staff got this. Unfortunately, I don't quite remember, but I just enjoy meeting the people. I mean, everyone has a story. Every kid has aspirations. I enjoy meeting the children, and in each ceremony, I truly try and reach out to all the children to make sure that today was something special. It's not something that mommy and daddy did, and that I had to wear an uncomfortable dress and come along, but that there's this crazy man in a robe sitting up there that had said something to me or paid attention to me. And the reason I do that is I want them to walk away thinking, I don't quite know what happened today, but something happened today. And then when they look back at the pictures 15 years, 20 years later, they'll say, my family's life changed that day. The trajectory of my family changed that day. And so I truly enjoy, and I have so many stories of people I've met that are wonderful. I had, there was this man who came up and he had 4 daughters. And so I said, I said, sir, you know, you're a very lucky man. And he goes, yes. I said, no, you know, you're very lucky. You have 4 daughters. And he goes, oh, yes. It's 4 daughters and my wife. I'm very lucky. I said, yes. And I said, where are you from? And he said, Palestine. And I said, are you a citizen of a country for the first time in your life today? And he started to cry. And he said, today is the first day I'm a citizen of a country, your stateless. And so, kind of helped each other for a bit. And then I turned to the daughters and I said, girls, you're very lucky to have a father like that. And they said, yes, we know. So when you have that moment with a family, what's not to like? I truly have done the best job in the country.
Yeah, but you've done it with over 100,000 people. So that's really what's remarkable. I mean, I think that, I think the magic that takes place, or in business, we would call it your secret ingredient,
Yeah, it
is that when you're in a room, whether it's 300 people, 500 people, because you've told me you've done some large ceremonies, you don't see them as a crowd of 500. You see them as the individuals and the family units in the room.
Yeah.
And I think,
especially the kids. I see them as individuals. Yeah. And I try my best to remember their grades. I ask every kid what their grade is, and I try and poke at them at the end of the ceremony.
Yeah, and I know that your story of your citizenship ceremony was really interesting, because unlike other people that may have gone with their family for ice cream and pizza, you didn't walk out of that citizenship ceremony going out with your family for something to celebrate. Can you share with everyone what you did?
Sure. I had always wanted to join the military, and so my ceremony was actually quite small. It was with the clerk, and I don't even think they turned on those lights. It was a bit dark in the room, and it was some ambient lighting. And I swore my oath, my family and I swore our oath in front of the clerk. And then I literally walked across the hall in Sudbury. The citizenship court was across the hall from the military recruiting center. So I crossed the hall and signed up right after I became a citizen. And the whole purpose of that was so that I could join the military, because I actually had to meet a deadline because I was going to university, and they were going to give me a scholarship. And so that's how it happened. And 39 years later, here I am.
Yeah. So, I think one of the things all new immigrants dream about is not only their success, but of course their children's success. And, you shared with the audience today how your mother gave up her nannies and her help, and she had to learn to cook and clean. And your father started his first job as a janitor, only to be promoted multiple years later, but decades later. But everything was in the view of the success of what their children could do.
Yes.
And you also shared with me yesterday that when you, came by train to Canada, your family couldn't even afford the food for the train. That's the impact was so immediate. You know, the change of your life. Can you share with everyone what your siblings are doing today?
Sure. Well, if I could just, I'll do that. But if I could just touch back slightly a bit on that. Every immigrant will agree with you. We come here because our children and our children's children. That's what the opportunity is, and that's how they're defined. And I would then say to them, if that's true, if that is your ambition and your desire, then you must accept that your life, the way you exist and the way you talk, the way you think, the way you raise your children would have changed as well. And so your children are now going to be better than you would ever have been. And your children's children will be better than what their parents would be. And so it's a new dynamic. And so you cannot say then, don't say to me then, well, in my old country, we used to do it this way. That's true. But now you're here. So that's that change as well. When we first came over and in the train situation, we were 5 of us and we had no idea. My mom was leading us. I was the oldest child. And we had no idea how big Canada was. And someone said to us, well, if you go to Canada, the railway is for some reason, the railway is very important in Canada. Don't know why, but it's important. So why don't you take a train? Well, we took a train from Vancouver to Sudbury and it was 3 days. And when you calculate the cost of food on a train in a dining car, we realized very quickly we could not eat. And so because the exchange rate was 6 Malaysian dollars to 1 Canadian dollar. And so the second day, food started appearing on our table and people around the dining car were buying this food to sustain us. And that's when you realize how generous the Canadian society is. And again, that's part of that glue that holds us together. Now with the 4 of us, I served in the military and now I have the honor of serving as a Canadian citizenship judge. My second brother is a very high-end computer expert in computer science and very renowned and very high-end, internationally known. My sister is an optometrist, and my youngest brother is a professor, doctor, medical doctor, and a liver specialist, again, very well known around the world. My mother retired from the Ontario Public Service. My father retired as a first-class station engineer. We all did that, and I think that's the opportunity. And if we had stayed in Malaysia, I think none of that would have been possible. And so that's that change.
And it's also what you're contributing to Canada, your family, your children. And sure. I think when we talk about the dream of the citizens and the newcomers, it's also the dream that Canada has to be yes. a place where people can succeed and to accomplish those things. I'd like, if it's okay with you, to end our conversation showing a small video clip of some of our clients.
Please do, yes.
But is there anything else you want to remark about before we show that? No,
I think it was a great conversation and I wish we could continue more and maybe we'll do another one. But
we would love that. And I know that you're doing online citizenship ceremonies, but I am looking forward to when we can meet in person, break some bread,
yes.
and attend your citizenship ceremony together with you. So first of all, thank you for everything. And I hope you join us for watching this little clip that was put together by our clients.
I love it. I would love it. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So hold on. And I'm waiting for my tech support to make it happen.
Yeah, it's happening. There we go. Thank you so much.
As a Canadian immigrant, I have the opportunity to be part of a melting pot of different cultures, races, and religions, where we get to form a bond and make a difference.
I became a Canadian citizen 25 years ago at the age of 11 when we came from South Africa, and becoming a Canadian citizen meant my parents could breathe easy knowing that we had a safe and secure future.
Being a Canadian citizen gives me a voice.
Being a Canadian citizen means having a seat at the table.
Being a Canadian citizen means when I vote, it counts.
Being a Canadian citizen means I have the freedom to make my visions a reality.
Being a Canadian citizen means I'm part of a society that embraces diversity and thrives in the beautiful North.
Being a Canadian citizen meant that I can live in a multicultural country where being different is celebrated and not looked down upon.
Becoming a Canadian citizen meant that I could risk it all as an entrepreneur without fearing for the safety of both my family and I.
Becoming Canadian citizens meant our kids would have better opportunities.
Becoming a Canadian citizen in 1971 at the age of 24 meant belonging to a great free nation. I'm proud to be able to speak my mind.
Becoming a Canadian citizen meant riding the bus without a bomb going off.
Being Canadian is the blessing to be able to save my family from the horror of the civil war in Syria so they can come here, start a new life and new journey.
Becoming Canadian was an incredible moment in my life because I share many of Canada's values and beliefs.
Becoming a Canadian citizen meant that I am now able to vote to determine the future direction of this blessed country. Thank you, Canada.
Becoming a Canadian citizen, together with my husband and my children, meant for all of us that we were welcomed into this extraordinarily multicultural, free and safe community where we could continue to pursue our careers, strengthen our roots here, and look for ways to give back.
Becoming a Canadian citizen meant that I can call this welcoming, accepting and peaceful country home.
Thank you to my tech team. Judge Wong, thank you so very much. It was a wonderful conversation, and I only am sorry I can't extend it longer.
Thank you so much for this honor. It really was an honor to be here today.
Great. And on behalf of JIAS Toronto, if you're interested in this webinar or other ones, please feel free to share them, review them on our Facebook page. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you all, and go Canada.
Thank you.